Reforms are inherently insufficient and temporary. You see, the employers don't stop by blocking the reform when we want it. Employers didn't just block the 8-hour day for decades. They did, but that's not all they did. When it was finally won by experiences like the May Day demonstrations in Chicago in 1886 and in other cities too, even when it was won, the employers didn't stop. That's why I mentioned in the first half overtime. That's how getting people to work more hours. The gig economy, when you can get people to work on their own time at home more hours than they can count. And you get all those movements to Mexico or Far East to make people work again the 10 to 12 hours that was normal. You can't get it done here, you get it done there. You respond to the efforts of the American working class to get an 8-hour day by saying, okay, we'll take your job away and give it to somebody in a foreign country who's so desperately poor they'll work 10 to 12 hours a day, like you did and like your parents did. So here's the lesson, to make it really blunt. We can't keep leaving in place a system that not only blocks the reforms we need, but undoes them after we've won them. It's absurd, this endless fight. And you know why the fight is there? Here it goes. It's the system. We have an economic system that in every office, every store, every factory has a tiny number of people sitting at the top deciding what's good for the part of the business they're interested in. And that's called the profit. That's why they're in business. The way I know that, they say so. And everything I see reinforces that they're telling me the truth. Profit is their bottom line. They're in it for the profit. Therefore, they want us to work as long as possible for whatever they pay us. Of course they do. That's good for their profits. And they don't want to put in good lighting and good air conditioning and good work conditions. And they're not interested in our work-life balance because that's not good for their profits. And here's what you're going to have to face, as we all are. They're not interested in spending a lot of money to test everybody for the virus, to clean everything every day over and over again, to disinfect it, to trace people who have the problem, to reconfigure the workplace. That's an army of people who have to be paid to do all of that. And that's not profitable. That's a cost of doing business. They keep costs low. Why? Because that makes the profit higher. You all know this. But we keep struggling to get a reform from the very people, employers. We, the employees, struggle to get the employer to do what's right by the majority. Just like we need a safe workplace today in the face of Corona, and they needed a safe workplace in 1886 so they wouldn't have to work 10 to 12 hours a day. But the employer doesn't see it that way. They don't want that. That's a cost without a gain. Workers wanted to be paid the same for 8 hours, not 12. The employer didn't want that. What was good for the worker, less time at labor, more for your work-life balance, was not good for the employer. That's called a conflict of interest. Or if you want to go to an older language, that's called a class struggle, pitting people with opposing interests. We got to face that, friends. The history of the capitalist system is the history of people, the majority, workers, employees, struggling for reforms, having a great deal of difficulty winning them, and then having an equal amount of difficulty preserving them, keeping them. We leave in place the capitalist system when all we do is reform it. We leave in place that little group at the top. with every incentive to block us and to undo whatever it is we win. And they have the profits of business that our labor helps to produce to use to block us and to undo us. So the answer can't be struggle again for reforms? Really? Again? What May Day teaches is we've been there and we've done that. And that's not the solution. It's a recipe for endlessly backsliding, trying again, being undone, trying again. Sure, we're provoked by the crisis of corona, but we also have to learn the lessons. Otherwise, we're going to go through this game yet again. How could it be changed? That's called system change. And that's what the coronavirus puts on the agenda. If we learn the lessons of all the reform efforts before and since the original May Day in 1886.